In this lesson, we are going to create this squash and stretch ball. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a control on the top to activate the squash from the top part. We've got a control on the bottom to activate the squash on the bottom. This spin control will always stay in the middle and preserve that, that rotation that's going on. And we've got the main control here, which I've called the body. Just reset everything, gone a little bit crazy. That's going to be our main controls to bounce our ball. And we also have a root control here, which is the master of absolutely everything. We're going to create this from scratch. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about locking channels, creating the color groups, and we're not even going to use an armature modifier. We're just going to do bone parenting. There's a little bit of a trick because the bone that we're parenting it to is going to be deformed just through normal parenting scale. So there's a lot to learn, but let's get started. All right, so let me try and draw a schematic of what's going to happen in this bouncing ball rig. It's pretty similar to our last stretching rig, but there's a few differences. Okay, so the main stretch mechanism is just going to be a single bone. This is going to be our stretch bone. I'll just put in STR for now. And on the top, we're going to have a top stretch control. So that's where it's going to stretch to. Now this is going to sit here, although I've just drawn it in an exploded view. So this is going to be our top. And down the bottom, we're going to have a similar thing going on. So it's going to live there, but I've just drawn it separated like that. So this is going to be our bottom control. We're also going to have one in the middle, so it's going to sit here. And this is going to be our spin control, spin. That's the main controls here. On top of that, also starting at this position here, we're going to have a body control, which is going to be the parent of all our controls here. So this is going to be the body. And then on top of that, we're going to have a master control, which is going to be the root. And that is going to sit here, which is going to be the world origin. So there's only going to be one constraint going on. That's on this guy. He's just going to stretch to this top control. And that's why I've drawn them exploded, because they're not actually parented together. So how does the parenting work? Well, this spin control is going to be parented to this stretch. And then the other two controls, the bottom is going to be parented to the body. The top is going to be parented to the body. Our stretch control is going to be parented to the bottom. So that way it's going to start from here and always stretch to the top. And our spin control is going to stick in the middle, and it's also going to inherit the scale of this stretching, which is how we're going to get the stretch happening when we do the spin. And the last parenting is the body gets parented to the root. So it is the master of everything. Now there's two extra special helper bones that I haven't drawn yet. And these ones are just going to sit at the top here. It's going to be our top mechanism bone. And we're going to have the same one down here on the bottom mechanism bone. And what are they doing? They've got the special job of just being parented to our top controls here. And this one's going to be parented to our bottom controls here. We track this mechanism bone to point at this top control. And this guy is going to point at this control down here. And then if we just override the display so that it's going to show in this location, so these ones are going to be overridden. So then it's going to always look like our controls here are pointing towards the other end of the chain. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of scribbles and stuff going everywhere. Let's see if we can actually make this in real life. All right, starting from a fresh scene, and like most of the tutorials, I'm going to select everything and delete it. But now we're going to add in a mesh that's going to be our geometry for the ball. So I'm going to add in a mesh, Shift A. I'm going to choose a UV sphere and just choose the default settings for now. Let's make it display smooth. So I'm going to hit W or right click if you're using the default and do shade smooth. And then we're just going to set up some materials. So I'm just alt selecting the middle section here and then pushing Control Numpad plus and to extend that. Now we're going to add some materials. So we're going to go add two new materials. So let's just go plus. Oh, this one here, give that one a new material. Let's go orange. Is going to be that material, and this one's going to be, whoops, this one's going to be blue. Now I'm going to change them from principal. Actually, let's leave it as principled. Let's make the base color. This one, did I call this one orange? Yes, orange. So let's choose a nice orange color. Somewhere around there, looking good. And now I'm going to copy that color, hover and Control C, and then I'm going to paste it down here oops, sorry, paste it down here in the object settings, the viewport display, as well as our material settings viewport display. Paste it there. So when we change our modes up here to either object or material, it's going to display the colors that we've set up. Well, it will show the main orange color in object shading, and we're yet to set up the other color. So let's do that. Now we're going to do the same thing to our blue color here. So let's just go base color. Let's choose a nice looking blue. That's looking good. Now I'm going to copy that color, Control C, and paste it in my viewport display and the object display color. Oh, what am I doing? That's not going to work because it can only show one color in that mode. So ignore that bit. I told you you were going to laugh at me, or at least I'm going to laugh at me. So if you want to show more than one color in the viewport, make sure that you turn the material shading set up here. Then you'll see your colors in solid mode, but I still haven't finished that yet. So we need to assign this blue color to those verts. Click assign. So now we've got our ball. Now, because I left it at the default settings, it's going to have a radius of 1 meter, but to make things a lot easier, I'm actually going to shrink that by half so it has a diameter of 1 meter. So that's pretty easy to do. I'm going to scale it in object mode. So scale, press S, and then 0.5. And you notice that that has shrunk down. We want this to be 111, so we're going to apply that. Control A, apply the scale. Okay, that's good. Now we want it to be halfway up. So I'm just going to raise it up on the Z axis, 0.5. So now our geometry goes from the ground up here. That's good. While we're here, I'm just going to add a subdivision surface. Before we start our rig, I'm going to name this. So this is going to be our ball geo. And let's just copy and paste that one because we're only doing one object. Now we're going to add in our armature. So let's do this in the front view. I don't know why I always do it in the front view, but I do. So add in a single bone. Let's turn on some stuff. So viewport display, whoops. Let's turn on our wire so we can see through the bones. And then in front, jump over to the armature tab and also turn on the names and the axes. Now jumped over into side view and I'm going to jump into edit mode. This bone's already in the right location for the stretch bone. So let's just name it. Let's just call this one stretch. I'm using lowercase because it isn't going to be a control. And let's also get some other controls happening. So I'm just extruding this one out with the E key, but I will make sure that I disconnect that parent. So yeah, there's long enough. So let's name this one. This one's going to be our top control. So let's just call it top. I'm going to clear the parent with Alt P and then duplicate it and just snap it down here. So there we go. And that's going to be our bottom. And also in this same location, we're going to add a root bone. So let's go Shift D. And while we're here, I'm going to scale it. Oh, make sure I scale around the active object. To scale this one, hit S2. So we just make it a little bit bigger. And this is going to be our root control. So that is going to be the master of everything. Okay, we're getting there. Now I want to find the midpoint of this bone so I can select the bone and then snap my cursor to that midpoint. So select the bone, Shift S, snap the cursor to selection. Now my cursor is at that point. When I add a bone with Shift A, that is where it's going to add it. So I need 2 bones in this position. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And I'm also going to shrink this one down because I don't need it to be that long. So I'm just going to scale it by half. So S, 0.5, enter. So this one I'm going to call my spin. And then I'm going to duplicate that because it's going to be in the same spot. To scale it up just slightly, so I'm going to hit S 1.25 and that's scale it up 25%. And I'm going to name that one body. Oh, I spelled that incorrectly. So let's spell it again and do it correctly. All right, I need 2 more bones. They need to be in the same location as our bottom and our top. So I'll just select these and hit Shift D. Let's scale them down smaller. So, whoops, if I change it to be the individual origins, then when I scale, both the bones are going together. So let's make this pretty small. Actually, let's just shrink it down to half of that size. So S.5, and that will get you to that size. And believe it or not, that's all the bones that I need. That is my whole entire setup. Although I do need to name these. So actually, I'm going to move this onto a different location. So I just moved it with the M key. This bottom is going to hide this one because it's going to be in my way at the moment. And this one is in my way, just hitting H to hide. And this top control is just going to be top underscore MCH because it is a mechanism bone. Same with this one. So bottom underscore MCH. And then I can unhide everything. All right, let's do some parenting. I'll turn on the other layer where I placed my root bone a moment ago, layer 16. Okay, so let's have a look at what we need to do. Our spin bone is going to be parented to our stretch bone. Let's do that first. Control P, keep offset. Our mechanism bone up here is going to be parented to the big guy. So Control P, keep offset. And I should have, actually, let's just hide this bone again. So hide. So I want to select this little guy first, and he's got to be parented to the big guy. Control P. Now I can unhide that. And we want the top and the bottom control. Actually, I'll do them separately. So the top and the bottom need to be parented to the root. So I'm going to select the top, select this guy, Control P, and then select this guy, Control P. There's one bone that I haven't parented, and that is our stretch. And that is going to be parented to our, not that one. So this guy is going to be parented to the bottom control. Control P, keep offset. Okay, let's unhide everything. Have a look in pose mode. So our root should move everything except our body. Why is that? Because we haven't parented our body. Let's do that right now. So the body gets parented to the root. Control P. Let's check this again. So the root should move everything, correct? Now the bottom should move, so at this stage, it should look kind of weird like that. And the top should just move the top one, and this bottom one should just move, yep. So this is looking good. I'm going to jump over to B-bone mode just to make the display a little bit better. Shrink this one down, so it's easier to select. Shrink this one down, so it's easier to select. And then shrink these ones down at the same time so they're easiest to select. So see how they're staggered like this? It makes it easier to select things. This guy I can make really small so that he doesn't obscure my view. So this guy is our stretch. He is going to stretch to our top control. So let's do that now. So we select the control and we go, who wants a constraint? Select this guy, I do. We're just going to choose stretch to. So now when we do this, we've got some stretching going on. And this is what we want to happen with our spin control. Because it is inheriting the scale, when we do scale it like this and warp it around, it's going to follow that warp. Now just reset everything and move to the next step of connecting the geometry to this rig. I'm back in object mode. Now we are doing squash and stretch, so you might think that we need to use an armature modifier for this, but all the strange squash and stretch is happening through parenting. So it's not actually through bone deformations or any constraints like that. So we can just parent it straight to the bone here. So this geometry is going to be parented to our spin bone. So I've selected my mesh and then select the bone, and I'm in pose mode. Now hit Control P and choose bone. So now when I rotate this one around, you'll see that the ball actually follows. That's great. And when I grab my control, looking pretty good, hey? That's how easy it is to connect the geo to the rig. I'm going to start tidying things up and get it a little bit organized, nice and logical. So let's sort some things out in the outliner. Oh, I can see here that I haven't named my armature yet, so let me start with that. Ball underscore rig is going to be the name of the armature. Copy that, paste it there, and let's set this up. So this is going to be our ball rig. I'm going to use capital letters because it's going to be the master collection of everything, and then I'm going to add 2 more collections. So click, click. Ball 1, let's call this ball rig. This is where I'm going to stick my rig. And ball 2 is going to become ball underscore geo, and that's where I'm going to put the geo. So everything's nice and organized. So now if I ever link this into a new file, I can just grab this master collection and it's going to grab everything that I need. And now I'm going to actually do some custom shapes. So I'm going to choose a root here for my root control. Bang, let's make this one bigger. So something like that. Let's actually make it 2. That's looking about right. Let's select our body bone. I'll make sure that I select the right one. So body. Let's choose a circle for this one. So circle. I want this one to be about 1, and let's just rotate it around the x-axis 90 degrees. And actually, let's make it a little bit bigger. 1.2. Now I'm going to edit this one. And let's just duplicate this and scale it a little bit smaller. But it's kind of making it more prominent as this is the master control. Now let's do the spin control. Whoops. Grab our spin. This one is going to be pretty similar. Create a circle. He's going to copy that same setting, which is good. It's going to be my starting point. And now I'm going to edit this from the side view. So click on edit. Let's just grab this, move it up, add a mirror modifier. It's a mirror modifier, but mirror it on the X. There we go. Okay, and let's also extrude it down to the midline. To clipping. Extrude it down to the midline so it snaps there. Okay, now I want to get rid of those faces, so I'm going to apply this. And that's all real geometry. And let me just delete the edge loop. Boom. And now delete the only faces. When we jump into object mode, that's going to be our spin control. It's not too obtrusive. Now let's put a couple of controls on the top and bottom. Let's do these together. So select the top there, grab some circles, bang, these are too big. Let's make them smaller. 0.4. There we go, looking good. So that is done. These ones don't get shapes because they're going to be hidden on a different layer, but we are going to set it up so that these ones track the top control here, and this one tracks the bottom control. Let me do that. I'll reset everything. Let's start with this one here. So I want to select the top control, then shift select this, Control Shift C, and let's do damped track, but it's pointing in the wrong direction to start with. All right, so we just make sure that we select that, and let's just turn it off and look at the axes that we want. We want this to track the positive Z axis, so let's do that. Positive Z. Let's do the reverse thing. So we'll grab this guy and as a target for our mechanism bone here. And I want to pay attention to the Z-axis. Z-axis is pointing up. So I want that to track the negative Z-axis. So Control Shift C, and then choose damp track and negative. So that's good. So now when I move this guy is pointing towards here, and this guy is pointing towards here. Let's override those transforms. So this one here, override transform, is going to be our top mechanism. Boom. There we go, that's looking good. And this guy is going to be overridden with our bottom mechanism. So that has taken care of that. Let's reset everything. Before I do any more, I want to make sure that I lock anything that we're not going to use. Let's do a little bit of cleanup. So these two, we don't need to worry about locking them because they're not going to be accessible by an animator. We're just going to stick them on our mechanism layer over here. And then the animator is never going to have to worry about them. So I never worry about trying to lock things that they're not going to touch anyway. This stretch bone is also a mechanism bone because it's not actually doing any deformation. So we're just going to move that over here to our mechanism bone layer. Now this guy, the root, I've already stuck on layer 16 down here. Let's put the main body control on layer 1, and let's put these ones, our squash and stretch, on layer 2, and let's put our spin on layer 3. So that's all we need to do in terms of our layers. Oops. So let me turn on those layers so we can see them. I'm also going to turn off the names now and the axes just to clean up things. And let's lock and tidy up. So this one doesn't actually do any rotation at all or scale. So we're going to lock that, and just to make it a little bit easier and neater, I always change it to Euler before we lock, because having 3 here is just going to take up less screen space. So we're going to do the same thing here. Now I could have actually done that at the same time. So let me show you this. I'll reset everything back to how it was because I want these to be both the same. So I'm going to select them both at the same time, hold down the Alt key as I do all this. So I'm going to hold down Alt and change that, and then hold down Alt and lock these so both of them, the only thing that we can do is translate them. Now I'm also going to hide our widget shape layers here so that when we move them, we don't see that ghost outline. And let's do this one. So we actually want to lock the movement of this one because we don't want the animator to break the rig. We don't want them to scale it because we can do that with the master root here. Now the rotation, you can leave it as a quaternion because you're likely going to rotate in 3 axes, but for the type of animation that you're going to do for these bouncing ball exercises, you're probably only going to use 1 or 2. So yeah, it's easier to animate with Euler. Okay, so that's our top controls and our spin. Let's look at our body. Now, same deal here. We can actually change this to be Euler just because we're not going to be doing some crazy animation. Actually, I've got a mistake here. So is this not parented correctly? So these ones should be parented to the body. Is that right? Let me have a look at the parenting here. Relations. Oh, no, they're parented to the root when they should be parented to the body. Sorry for that. I'll fix that by selecting the top, the bottom, and then the body control last, and then jump into edit mode, Control P, and then keep offset. Now when we move this, yes, fixed it. So yes, our body should move all of our main controls. This one should move that, this one should move that, and our spin control is always going to stay in the middle, looking good. We want to scale that. Actually, yeah, I think it's makes sense to scale the ball here. So we're going to leave this one open, and we're going to leave all those channels open actually. And the same with this one, although we're just going to change that to be Euler so we can move it around anywhere, rotate it, and that's going to be our master control. Right, let's do our bone colors over in the armature tab. Let's go to bone groups. I'm going to give this 1, 2, 3, 4 colors. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go red. I'm going to make this one red. Sign that. Let's do this one next. Actually, let's make this one red as well. I'm going to assign that to be the red one. Now our spin, let's make this one yellow. So let's assign that and make it yellow. And our top control and our bottom control, let's make this one blue. And then we'll call it blue. Whoops, lie. Let's call it blue. And we don't need this group here. I think that's everything. Let me just have another look at this. I'm going to also turn off my relationship lines because they are getting in my way. And also if another thing's getting in your way, the in front, we can do that. Make it a little bit easier to see our animation. So there we go. That is our bouncing ball rig.